allowing people to interact right on the site they're at or in their mobile. So it's changing rapidly. And so all that upfront work is happening, and that's coming, and that's being driven by data and your analytics. So, I mean, the focus on that, what you have is gold, and you should mine it as best as possible.
I would just add one more plug for, I mean, in years past, I think it's just giving me hives, but process. The key thing is process. If you haven't set those processes up, if you don't deeply understand how people are engaging with you today, if you haven't asked yourself, how is your search optimization, if you haven't done an audit, if you haven't then set up the back-end process against the key things you're trying to gather in from internal data sets, if you haven't clearly laid out what your outcomes are and understood your content strategy and all the things that we've talked about today, those aren't set up as a process. We call it the social influence system, but there are many different names for it. You don't have those set up. You will now get out the end results that you're looking for. So I think, digital has been the Wild West, and by definition, the Wild West means we're cowboys and we run around and try new things. You got to continue to do that, but guess what? The real news is the processes that are going to make us successful longer term.
I thought you were going to say there's a new show in town.
Oh, I should have.
Who's going to boil the ocean?
Yeah, exactly.
So, you work with a giant nameless tech company in Seattle. You consult with giant MNCs across the globe. What if you're, a surf shop in Coronado, or you own, a couple restaurants, in a city? That sounds really expensive. It sounds really resource heavy. What if you're just kind of a normal mom and pop doing the day to day? How does that change it?
Well, I mean, Blendtech is a good example again. For $50 investment, 500% increase in sales, I'll take that. I'll take that all day. But the thing is that now that's been done, so somebody else has to come and move the bar. So it is getting more difficult for the SMEs. But I think the SMEs on a percentage basis will gain much more out of this than the global brands. So pick any global brand you want. They do a very successful online campaign, with the exception of some which are incredibly successful, like the P&G one. With the Old Spice. That was a dying brand, they've rejuvenated that. That is worth a lot. But most of them are sort of mediocre successful. They add 5% to 10% in terms of overall sales. And they're considered, knockout successes anyway. But the small mom and pop shops, the guy with the restaurants, in fact, we did a restaurant chain in the US, they see 100% increase. They see, that exponential benefit coming out of this. And now we can be, SME businesses can compete globally. There's a few up-and-coming rising stars in the fast-moving consumer goods sector that we're keeping an eye on. Very successful out of South Korea, out of China, out of Southeast Asia, and they're able to compete with P&G and Unilever because they don't need to spend the same amount as them in traditional media anymore. They can go direct. They can create engagement. Sometimes they they fly the flag and get that sort of, that they appeal to that segment of the market. On nationalistic terms, but whatever you've got to use. Right? So now they can compete, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for big brands to ignore them.
Are the analytics the same? Are you measuring the same thing?
I think you're measuring similar things. So at the high level, at the top line level, you're saying yes, I still need to know, how many people are interacting with my brand versus the investment. I need to know, what's the click-through rate. All those things are similar. But then you have to be a lot more focused when you're almost a single brand company. So you can see, you take the portfolio of any big FMCG, and I'm using them because they're kind of, I think they're kind of leading in many respects in this area. They've got, very volatile success rate. Some brands do very well, some brands don't. You would ask why. Is it the process that's different? Is it the people that are different? Are they spending different amounts of money? Are they just getting it all wrong in some markets versus others? And market to market, China to Indonesia, you can't run the same campaign. So, the ability to lift and drop these kinds of programs doesn't necessarily work that well. So you could pretty much run the same campaign in traditional print or TV ad. Sort of, in the US and you're okay, but in Asia it's going to be very different. So smaller business, yes, it's going to be different, but it's the nuances of those differences which are important. And I think that this is now creating an opportunity for SMEs to compete with global players.
That's awesome. That's really good because, that's the driver of any sort of economic recovery. So we have about 7 minutes left, and I want to open this up to you guys. I'd love to hear how you're using analytics, questions for the panel, success stories, some problems that you've had. So let's open questions. Any questions for the panel?
I have a question for Brent. You were talking about that analytics tool that you use to analyze everything that you pull up. I wanted to know what's the tool, where'd you get it, and what kind of insights are you able to pull out from it?
Well, we're actually using several. Not cheating, but we have to, because each tool, as we were saying, or as I was saying, doesn't offer all of the sort of complete picture of Asia. We're a regional hub office, so we take care of 14 countries, 14 offices. And so we needed to find some different ones. So Rating 6 is a really solid tool for ontology. We've used Meltwater Buzz. We're beta testing right now. We're working with them to look at that, and they're really, each one is adding new elements to them and folding up modules that will make them even more powerful. So there isn't, again, a perfect tool yet, but they will come in, each one of the people I just mentioned will come in and give you let you test them out for a couple of weeks and run 10 campaigns at the same time, or 10 projects, or listening opportunities, whatever you wanted to track. And that will give you an opportunity to see which one will work best for you. I'm not selling for them, but I've had a lot of conversations. And in terms of how we analyze them, we do have twin turns. So they're interns, because they're basically the babes of digital. They live it, they breathe it, they understand it. They'll find interesting things about it. They will be up all night doing it for fun, or on weekends sending you a BBM going, check this out. So we keep them, they're on it all the time, but we're not fanatical. It's not 24 hours a day, that's unreasonable. But we do shift them out, so we monitor 16 hours a day. So that's where you can get the insights and information.
There's a few other hands up. Well, I'll ask,
What does she ask?
My question is about web analytics. It seems like a very separate topic, but I'm just wondering, with almost every part of the web becoming really social, how do you think web analytics can work hand in hand with social media analytics?
Well, I think it goes back to the paid, owned, earned. If you're, owned, would be your own site. Anyone worth their salt is using some level of web analytics, but by themselves, it sort of don't mean anything. And so you begin to understand, again, back to business problem solving, but more importantly, I think, well, not more importantly, but equally importantly, is that intersection between the three. I think if you saw the Nokia presentation, they said paid, owned, earned, and they had sort of the interrelationship between those three. And I think that's really an emerging science in this space, is how do we bring them together. So I think web analytics are as relevant as they are then compared and with the other two pieces. So when we talk about owned, we talk about, let's say in the IT space, there is the number one place globally that audiences go is brands that they buy for information about that brand. Number one, hands down. And so what we found is by going to that site, what are you doing? Are you optimizing for that? Are you welcoming them? Are you creating engagement opportunities? Or are you just trying to sell them something? That's not going to get you the same thing. So are you looking at it through the lens of what your site can do, how your site connects, how your site is amplified, and then if paid, obviously, then how are you driving people there? How are you engaging in the media that you're buying? And then ultimately, how are you engaging at a broader urban perspective? So I think web analytics are only as relevant as they are engaged with those other two platforms.
and I think that's sort of really become visible in the last couple of years when you look at the old kind of school web analytics as attached to what you just called slippery content. So what are those web analytics for videos that you've created but have slipped into the viral stream, and you still need to measure what's happening,
And web analytics can mean to anybody in the IT world here how to optimize for your site. and basically using that to, the heuristics is how you look at each one of your sites and what your hotspots are and where people are clicking, and by moving a button this much, you can increase click-through by 5%. So there's an art to that as well, and you shouldn't ever forget doing that, because those are table stakes.
Yep.
Using web analytics to find out where people are going, where your abandonment rates are. I mean, those are the things that you should be doing all the time on top of social media and social engagement and social listening, because if you haven't optimized your sites for mobile, for web browser, for iPad, whatever you're doing, then you're missing, the experience is so bad that you're going to lose them anyway. So use those as well.
All right, we've got a minute and a half left, 30 seconds apiece. What's next?
Thank you. What's next? I'm really keen to see what happens with mobile. So going back about 2 years ago, the prediction was that from that point on, that by 2015, 2020, somewhere in there, mobile will be the main device for accessing the internet. We now think it's going to be somewhere like 2012, 2013. And so as things are becoming exponential, we start to see new technologies coming around, the 3D printer, and how are we going to use that? How do marketers use that? What are all the IP implications? What do you do about creating engagement on your site? You can start to create. I think 3D is going to be one of the things that we're going to see coming up in the future. I mean, this is really the future forward looking at. We're going to see that mobile is going to be the main device that people are accessing. So how are you going to reach these people? I did a session the other day where I asked who watches TV on a regular basis. Hardly anyone put up their hand. When I said, how many people access the internet every day, obviously, everybody was saying, yes, of course we do. So it's really interesting to see that all these things are going to converge. And, we have to think about how they access this content on these devices. Eventually, we have to sort of make it seamless, and that's where I think it's going to go, where there's no delineation really between work, play, rest, family. You're just doing all those things almost simultaneously and without the boundaries that currently exist. That's where I see things going. So measuring that ROI in that environment is challenging.
Here we go.
Wow. I wish I knew, because then we'd all be rich. But I do agree that mobile is the future. It really, look at India. India has 40% penetration for mobile phone, and I think it's like 10% for the internet. It's people just jumping over the internet, not getting MacBook Pros, or not getting hardwired in with any kind of system. They're just going mobile, and the growth is explosive. And they also have, I think, 50% of the population is under the age of 15. So it's going to be internet. What? It'll be mobile. Same with probably China and the rest of Asia. I think Singapore for Asia has the highest penetration for smartphones. So it's always on, always with, and that's where if we're going to look and focus on one type of technology, or where the growth will be is in mobile. That's
Jen, future of measurement?
Well, I just said future more broadly, but I think screen agnosticism. So I would even go beyond mobile, right? Who knows what the next screen, or experience agnosticism, right? Maybe chips in our heads, but seriously. And then I think the second thing is the matrix. The second thing is, and I don't know, I think this has implications to measurement. I'm going to stretch a little bit here, but because I think that in the next 10 years we will see major brands go away because they have not gotten that engagement is not just about changing your campaign, but it's instead about changing the business that you run. And so I think that, and I think as that ties to measurement is, we're going to watch audiences run away from brands and move to new and emerging brands who have built their business on an engagement ecosystem and an engagement environment. And I think that we better know that today, because it changes the world. It changes the
trust equals loyalty.
Yeah.
And the new brands, the challenger brands, the people that are using social engagement correctly and social media correctly are the ones that are going to be able to capitalize on that. And trust is so important, because the larger brands are losing or have lost a lot of that trust factor. Our mums and dads, were very brand loyal, and then we had a bunch of Philistines running around who were brand agnostic. But brand loyalty is coming back in a big way with the challenger brands, and so that's the sharp point right now.
Okay, we are out of time. Brent, Jerry, Jen, thanks so much, and let's give them a round of applause. Great panel.